of London, Rome and Paris put together. You can move the churches and cathedrals in London, Rome and Paris and fit them in the complex of Karnak. The good news is we're not going to visit all 46 temples. Okay? In fact, the only temple that's actually open for visitors mainly is the Great Temple of Ammon, but that already covers about 1/3 of the whole area. So just zipping through that temple, stopping every once in a while to see a couple of the things in there, it's going to take us well over an hour and a half just to walk through it. Okay? So bring your water, bring up there. Some Muslims have venerated the religious men with the domes, right, covering a section of what used to be the dock. This was all a dock, an extended dock right up here, so that during the flood times when the water came up to the sides up here, they used to come by boats to these docks and then get off the boats to go down into the temple. Of course, the original complex, or the main complex, was completely surrounded by the mud brick enclosure wall. You can still see a section of the wall just behind us, right there. It's part of the mud brick wall that surrounded the inner temple of Ammon, but then there was a much bigger one that surrounded the entire complex altogether, in housing all the 46 temples with all the additional buildings inside. We're going to take a look at an aerial photograph which gives you an idea about the size of the Sphinx with the rams, where we came in, dock. Right. This is the surrounding wall of the temple of Ammon. Part of it, that corner right there is what we're looking at just opposite there, that section. And from there you can see this temple has two different axes. There is a main axis which goes from west to east.
It's okay. No.
There's this one with 6 pylons on it. And then there is another axis with 4 pylons on the side. Okay. From the end of these 4 pylons, there is an avenue of sphinxes which goes all the way to... No, not that one. No, no. That's a different one. Okay, this is a trick question. For 1,200 BC, that's a substantial population.
An army.
At that time. Okay. The height of the ramp again, and so on, till they reach the top. When the building is completed, they start removing the mud brick ramp, and as they remove the ramp, they polish the surfaces of the walls, and they did their paintings and the carvings first, and then their painting. So the temples were built from the bottom up, but they were carved and painted from the top down. Okay. Luckily, we still have one of the ramps because, as we said, this pylon was never completed. We still have part of the ramp behind it to tell us bottom first, and then it will fall over from the top. But that's not the case here. The bottom is intact. It has been washed away from the top. For this to happen, the water has to be above the level of these ramps. So the shell shape you're looking at up there marks how high the water was during the flood times. During a high flood, the water reached up to that level. Remember, we said the highest recorded flood is 17 meters, 6-story building. That's about how high the water would have reached to erode or to actually literally wash away the ramps from the top. Right?
Do you get those kinds of rains now in Ethiopia?
The rain still happens and the flood still happens, but it's held back by the high dam.
Yeah, I know that, but you get that volume of water in Ethiopia, or is it dried out enough that you
Yes,
don't
and
get
you often have, in Ethiopia, the problem with Ethiopia is that because the land is very steep in Ethiopia, and it all steeps towards the north, the god Osiris, where the king is standing, wrapped in linen. That's why when you look at the figures, there are no details of the body. It's completely wrapped up. You cannot see his feet, you cannot see his toes or anything like that. It's all wrapped up in linen in the form of a mummy with the hands crossed, the way they actually used to mummify the body. This is known as the form of the god Osiris. To enable the king to become Osiris in the afterlife when he dies, holding the flail and the haka, or the crook, which are symbols, of course, of rule and royalty. And forming the entrance, of course, into the temple itself, where inside there was another hypostyle hall. You can see the colonnaded hall up there, and then the shrine on the east. Most of the scenes all around are the offering scenes again, the king presenting the offerings to the gods to remind them how much he did for them while he was alive, so that in the afterlife, when he needs the help and support of the gods, they will be giving in the festivals of Amun-Ra and presenting the offerings with saying their best wishes, basically, to Amun-Ra. Do we identify any of these steps and letters? Any of them look familiar?
crocodile. Who's the crocky god? We saw him in the temple of Komombo. He is Sobek, the crocodile god. We've seen Sobek already. There. We've heard of her, but you haven't probably hard to identify from some of the others. This is the goddess Hathor, the cow. From the cow goddess. The only way you can tell really is only from the writing. That's how her name is written.
Enemies of Egypt. Trodden down.
11 years, 20 years, 60 years.
His son finished it, he started it, and it took about 65 years.
Nope. 65?
I just did the math up there on the wall. Wasn't it 65? No?
65 years?
Yeah.
For what? For this?
Well, there was a thing there. I just read it. I was trying to figure out.
No, for the building of this hall?
Yeah.
It was they think it might have been started by his father, by Seti, but it was completed during the time of Ramses II. There's been estimates that have been given as low as 7 years, okay, and as high as 80 years.
7 to 80 years.
Between 7 to 80 years, which is a big, huge difference.
Yeah.
Okay? It's a huge difference between either side of a doorway or an entrance to a temple or a city or so on. And they were basically, originally, the obelisks were used by the ancient Egyptians during the very early period, during the time of the worship of Ra, the sun god, especially in Heliopolis in the north. Remember Heliopolis in Cairo, around the airport side? Heliopolis is the city of the sun. And it's because that's where the sun god was going, in that area. And they basically represented the fingers of the people pointing up to the sun with a small pyramidion at the top, the little pyramid at the top, very finely polished, reflecting the power and the rays of the sun onto the whole universe. When Amun and Ra became united, they were then used as symbols as well for the god Amun-Ra. And basically, they're a show of how much the kings, all the queens, were willing to do for the gods. Moving the art in its own. Yeah. It's almost an art in its own. The debasement of the figure of the queen. Hat, cheap suit. Okay?
Hat and cheap suit.
And of course, here she's standing, running towards the god Amun-Min, the god of fertility, which we've all seen before. Another figure of her here presenting offerings and receiving blessings from Amun-Ra. With the revolution and the end of the Civil War and the liberation of the Americas from the British rule, and so the French ordered the boat to transfer it to America instead.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, it was coming from Egypt. It was ours, and
You
it
gotta
took it.
take
Ours.
credit for everything.
2400 BC, if not even earlier. Remember the existing buildings, the oldest existing buildings, the shrine, the outer shrine is 1700 BC. So these things are over 1,000 years before that. These rocks there. But it was such a sacred spot that even when the kings of Egypt decided to expand the temple in this direction, they still left out the court and started the building behind it. Thutmose is the third in particular, around 1500 BC or 450 BC, when he decided to build his Akhminu, the festival hall that we have right here. He left out the court, built the hall behind it, to use it as a hall for celebrating his victory in the different campaigns, the different military campaigns, using the court as a place to exhibit all the spoils and things that he brought back from these military campaigns, presenting them, of course, to Amun-Ra. During the early Christian period, however, the hall was taken over, used by the early Christians, and we will see a lot of figures of saints drawn on some of the columns.
Dark Ages. I mean, literally, you did. You put everything in a category.
Ready to be
And then, or, you know,
put together?
Jeez.
This would be a puzzle.
The problem is there's so much also that's still missing.
You gotta remember how it's so
Translations. Okay, but it's all your relation with the kids, and you need to go into the schools and see what they do and ask them about the things they do.
I've been told I can't ask any more questions.
That's it.
Yes. Sorry.
And I thought you were the nice one.
That's right, and she is.
I said, yeah. I said, you're not Louise is really the nicest one. You know? Yeah. Well, right out the window.